The click of the lock echoed through the roller rink as Ted left. For 15 years, that sound meant the start of my shift. Tonight, it sounded like a door closing on a tomb. "See you, Dave." Or not, I guess. His parting words still hung in the air. I stood alone in the dimmed entry, breathing in the familiar smell of old floor wax and sweat. But the rinky-dink roller rink felt different now. The place that had been my refuge, my penance, wasn't a workplace anymore. It was just a shell waiting for a demolition crew. Like something already dead, but not yet buried. I grabbed my cleaning cart and wheeled it toward the main floor. Nobody would skate here tomorrow. Hell, nobody would skate here ever again. Nobody would complain if I missed a spot. Nobody would even notice if I walked out right now. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the buffer. 15 years of cleaning this floor, knowing exactly where each scratch and dent lived. 15 years of avoiding thinking about why I stayed. The silence pressed against my eardrums. I couldn't bear it anymore. For a moment, I had the irrational sense that I wasn't alone. I squeezed the trigger and the buffer roared to life. The mechanical hum filled the space, drowning out my thoughts. I pushed it forward across the gleaming wood, starting my final jam with this place. I completed the loop, the buffer gliding smooth over the glossy surface. Muscle memory had long ago taken over the rhythm, the right pressure, the perfect speed. The machine hummed its mechanical lullaby as I turned to inspect my work. Then something caught my eye near the center of the floor. Faint streaks smudged the surface where I had just polished, like someone had walked across in damp socks. I blinked hard, and the marks remained. Must be the lighting. The overhead fixtures had been flickering all night, shadows playing tricks where there should be none. That fresh wax shouldn't hold any prints at all. My eyes burned. The graveyard shift will do that to you eventually. Your brain starts filling in the blanks. I had been pushing myself harder than normal tonight, trying to make sure this last cleaning was perfect. Like it mattered. "I'm just tired," I muttered to myself, my voice strange in the empty space. I didn't stop to look closer. I didn't want to. My hands tightened on the buffer handle as I swung it back around, running the pad over the marks until they disappeared beneath the machine. The floor gleamed again, perfect and untouched. I turned the machine, aiming for the exit, letting the roar drown out everything else. After I cleaned the bathrooms and the snack bar, I circled back to check my work again. Something nagged at me. It was like a janitor's instinct, I guess. And I've done this job for too long not to trust it. The same spot in the rink center caught the overhead light wrong. The sock prints had returned, but they weren't faint anymore. I could see the heavy impression of a heel and the stretched, smeared outline where toes pressed through. They looked small. Too small for me. That's not possible, I thought to myself. Nobody's been in here since we closed. Bad batch of wax, I decided, my voice tight. Had to be. The wax was separating, pooling. The alternative here wasn't worth considering. I wheeled the buffer over, lining up the pad directly over the marks. I didn't just guide it this time. I gripped the handles until my knuckles went white. I was going to grind this imperfection out of existence. The machine roared, vibrating up my arms as I leaned my full weight into the handle. I drove the spinning pad down, crushing it against the wood. Burn it out, I thought. Make it perfect. But when I pulled it back, my stomach dropped. The prints didn't vanish. They smeared. Instead of clearing, the wax had turned gummy and gray beneath the heat. The sock marks distorted out from underneath the buffer, twisting into milky, ghostly streaks that radiated outward like something desperately trying to hold on. The pristine surface I'd spent hours on was ruined. A clouded, ugly scar on the floor remained. My hands trembled as I killed the power, the silence rushing back in to choke me. I knelt down and traced the smears back where they began. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They started exactly where Brian had fallen. Not near it, not around it. In the precise spot. My fingers hovered above the spot without touching it. He wasn't supposed to be out there in his socks. It was like running on ice. I remember the soft thump slide of him building up speed to show me a trick, shouting for me to watch, but I hadn't turned around. I was too busy wiping down the handrails to see him lose his footing. I only heard the sudden stop, a heavy wet crack against the boards that didn't sound like a game. I pushed myself up fast, my heartbeat hammering in my throat. It was just a coincidence. The closing of the rink had nothing to do with his death anniversary being this month. My brain was just looking for patterns that weren't there. That's all. But I couldn't look away. My mind, starved for sleep, tried to overlay a familiar rhythm onto the mess. For a second, the smears looked uneven. The left mark landing heavier. A slight twist at the ball of the foot. It was the same hitch Brian had in his step. No. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing the image away. Don't do that, I told myself. Don't look for him in the wax. Karen always says I buried myself in this job so I wouldn't have to face it. You're still there with him, she said the night she finally packed her bags. You think if you scrub hard enough, you can wipe that night off the calendar. Grief is a liar, I thought to myself, my hands shaking as I gripped the machine. You're just seeing what you want to see. I cranked the buffer back to life, the roar rising up to drown out the silence. The floor needed attention near the concession stand anyway. Any place but here. I come back to the spot later. Well, maybe never. I pushed the buffer toward the snack bar, focusing on the path ahead, not looking back. My shoulders hunched tight. I could still feel that spot on the floor like it was watching me, but I wasn't going to think about it. I'd finish this job like any other night. I glanced down at my fresh work and froze. There were new sock prints appearing on the floor I had just cleaned. Small impressions forming in the wax, not behind me where I'd been, but in front of me, where I was about to go. I stopped moving completely, holding my breath. Another print materialized, left foot landing first, with that slight twist inward at the toe. Someone's here. Something's here. My fingers gripped the buffer like a shield. The machine's steady hum filled my ears, a mechanical heartbeat drowning out the quiet. As long as the buffer ran, I could still pretend that this was normal, that I was still in control. Just finish the job, I whispered. Just. The buffer stuttered. The motor whined, dropped, pitched, and then seized with a mechanical shriek that echoed off the walls. Then nothing. The silence crashed down, absolute and heavy. My breath sounded thunderous in my ears as I stood completely still, the dead machine gripped in my hands. A soft, wet sound broke the silence. The heavy slap of a foot, then the drag of a heel. Not imagined, not distant. It was right behind me. My body knew that sound before my brain could process the fear. I knew the weight of it. The way the left foot landed first, heavier on the inside edge. The specific uneven rhythm I hadn't heard in 15 years. Brian. My knees locked. I didn't decide to stop. My body simply refused to take another step. The dead buffer slipped from my numb fingers and hit the floor with a deafening clang. I tried to force my legs to move, sideways, backwards, anywhere, but they wouldn't answer. Fresh sock prints appeared in the wax to my left, then my right. I stopped breathing. They weren't just following me anymore. They were blocking every way out. I stood exposed under the flickering lights. No weapon. No shield. The sock prints circled me, deliberate and wet. Yet nothing lunged. Nothing struck. Just that patient, uneven stride marking the floor, closing the circle. My heart hammered against my ribs, but the panic was gone, replaced by a cold, heavy certainty. I couldn't run. I couldn't clean it away. The final night had finally caught up to me. The footprints suddenly stopped circling. The last slap of wet fabric against wood hung in the air. Then silence. A vacuum so intense the pressure pressed against my eyes until they hurt. I waited for something to happen, for whatever was hunting me to make its move. But nothing came. The rink fell into a stillness that felt heavier than any sound could be. The prints had driven me exactly where they wanted me. A final pair of sock prints pressed into the wax directly in front of me. Not attacking or anything, just standing there. Toes pointed directly at my boots. Waiting. In all those years of cleaning this spot, I'd closed my eyes, looked away, rushed past. But tonight, I didn't move. I forced myself to look down. Size 6. The left foot twisted, slightly inward. The weight distribution heavier on the inside edge, just like it always was. I stared at the empty air above the prints. I didn't reach for the scraper. I didn't reach for the buffer. My hands hung at my sides, empty and trembling. I finally stopped looking away. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words scraping my throat raw. My voice cracked, but I didn't back away. I kept my eyes on the wet wax. "I didn't look," I said. "You asked me to watch you, and I kept cleaning. I heard you fall, and I didn't turn around." The silence in the rink stretched tight, pressing against my ears until it felt like pressure. I waited for something to answer. The floorboards groaned softly. The wet prints shifted. The left heel lifted just enough to break contact, then settled back down. When it did, the space around me felt heavier, like the air itself had thickened, like whatever was standing there had finished deciding something. I stopped breathing. The prints stayed where they were. They glistened in the weak light, moisture spreading outward, ruining the finish I'd spent all night trying to perfect. They didn't fade. They didn't move closer. A relay clicked overhead. The lights along the far wall went dark, then the next row, then the next, each bank shutting off with a dull pop, the darkness advancing across the rink the same way the lights had come on hours earlier. I stood frozen as the last row flickered above me. The final light snapped off. I was left in total darkness. I couldn't see the floor. I couldn't see my hands in front of my face. I couldn't tell where the prints were anymore. I didn't move. I stood there in the black, waiting. Not for the step to land, but for the sound of it to come.